Hello, everyone. I am back with part 4 of my HPSP journey. Uh, if you've been following along, you know that my previous videos I talked about how I got the scholarship and what it was like being a PA student with HPSP. And then today it is official. I am now an officer and a physician assistant in the United States Air Force. And I'm going to talk about final steps in the process, which was paperwork surrounding PA school graduation and then OTS. And yes, there's a picture of me at OTS after I graduated. I will have a lot of pictures of OTS throughout this presentation. And then I'll also talk about what OTS was like and then talk about moving to my first duty station. So we're going to start with very boring paperwork. And before I get into that, I will say this video is kind of going to be tailored more towards people who actually have the scholarship and are ready to graduate PA school. If you are just now looking into the scholarship and kind of deciding if it's right for you, a lot of this information might seem kind of overwhelming and might not make a lot of sense, but we'll go through it and you're welcome to watch as long as you want. So to start off with just kind of a timeline of things, looking at the left over here, about 60 days prior to graduating PA school, you should get an email from the AFPC, that's the Air Force Personnel Center. It came from an email, just a generic workflow, I'm supposed to say flow, workflow email, and they requested a bunch of paperwork to be filled out, which I'm going to go over on the next slide. And then about 30 days prior to PA school graduation, I worked with the education manager through AFPC, and we got a OTS start date. Now, a little side note on that, I actually requested a later OTS date because I wanted some time after finishing PA school to, study for my PANCE, take a break, go on a trip, see family, relax a little bit. And she was able to work with me on that, which I was very appreciative of. However, they did kind of push back. They want you to go to OTS as soon as possible. And so that's just a side note on that. And then I graduated PA school, and then 2 weeks later, I got an email from DHA, which is Department of Health. I don't remember what the A stands for, but basically it's like the overarching agency that is in charge of healthcare for the government. And so they had some more paperwork that they wanted filled out, which again, I'll go over in future slides. And then about 30 to 45 days before my OTS start date, I got another email from AFPC with my extended active duty orders. So I found out where I'd be going for my first duty station after OTS. So that was fun. And then also around 30 to 45 days before you start OTS, you will get an email from the home center regarding things that you need to do to start OTS. So going back to that first email that you should receive, I wrote the email up top here because if you are coming up on PA school graduation and you're within that 2-month period and you haven't heard from them, go ahead, probably send this email, send them an email. This is the email address. But when they do reach out to you, they're going to ask for all of these things. So OTS SOU, that is a statement of understanding. This basically was like, hey, did you know that you're going to go to OTS after this? Yep, sign it, send it back. The BCS SOU was also pretty standard. It was just like, did you know that you're going to serve for 3 years after you're done with school? And I was like, so you sign it, you send it back. The Form 133, so this is your oath of office form. Now this is pretty important. So you are eligible to take your second oath of office and become a first lieutenant the day that you graduate PA school. And to my knowledge, you want to do that as soon as possible, as soon as you of that day of graduation or close to then, because this is the day, your date of rank. So it comes into play in the future when you want to advance to captain. It's going to be based off the date that you graduated PA school or the the date that you got this oath of office, that you take your second oath, sorry, versus like the day that I graduate OTS, which for me was a difference of about 5 or 6 months. So the sooner you can take your second oath of office, the better. And it just has to be done by an officer in any of the military branches, and it does not need to be notarized. I had that as a question because my first one was, and I didn't know if I had to get the second one. It doesn't. So that's that. As far as updated physical goes, that was kind of worried at first, but it was another piece of paper that you sign, basically just saying that you think you're in good health and that you've had no issues, and that's that. Address memo, they just want to know updated contact information, like a personal email address, because once you finish PA school, they no longer will send emails to a .edu account. So I had to make a new personal email. The HPSP contract, I remember I asked them about this because I was like, I signed that already before I even started PA school, and they were like, yep, we got it on record. So I didn't have to do anything there. And then they want official transcripts as well. And so obviously when you get this email 2 months prior to graduating PA school, you can't take your oath of office yet, and you don't have official transcripts yet. So you kind of just gotta do these things as you can and get to send them the other things later once you are able to. So there's me. I graduated PA school, yay. And then 2 weeks later, I got this email from that email. It is the credentialing office, essentially, for the Air Force, or even all the military, I think. And unfortunately, they needed some information from my program, and I had to go back to school. Even though I graduated, I had to go back and meet with some professors because they wanted a letter from my program director with the date of completing my program, and it needed to be on a letterhead and have it signed, things like that. The AAF Form 1540 was an application for privileges. It kind of required some basic info, like your name, your address, and then just stated that you were applying for privileges. I think it needed a signature from someone on it. They also wanted copies of things like BLS, ACLS, PALS, so I sent those in. And then they wanted an NPI number, and this is kind of interesting. Everyone that is practicing medicine applies for an NPI number, and you don't really have to have anything to apply for it. You don't have had to have passed your PANCE yet. You just apply for it and you get it right away. Now, the weird thing about this is that in the application, it wants your work address and, like, if you have a duty phone number or whatever. And I didn't have those things yet. I didn't have my orders yet. And so I wrote my home address and my personal cell phone number. And then I later found out that your NPI number, like if anyone is to look you up, all that information is public. So my home address and my personal cell phone number were all public. And I was like, that's not cool. So as soon as I got my orders and figured out the address of my new work, I made sure that I went back into the NPI website and updated that. And I provided that website here because it's called, if you type in NPPES, it should come up and you can make an account and get your NPI number. They want copies of orders, which again, I didn't have at the time that they emailed me, so I just let them know that I don't have them yet, and I sent them over as soon as I got them. They want a Form 367, which is basically your references, and I believe they specified that one of them had to be your program director, and then they wanted another one to be like a clinical preceptor or a clinical instructor, something like that. I just chose one of my other PA school professors. And then they have this list of clinical privileges. And so this had to be filled out with, I believe it was the program director. I could be wrong, but it was basically it was a big long list of all the things that a provider could do, like sutures, intubation, lumbar punctures, even like smaller stuff like GYN things like putting in Nexplanon, or can you put in an IUD, like things like that. And you had to have your, clinical instructor, whoever it was, say whether you had learned it or didn't learn it, or if you're competent, something like that. So it was kind of some confusing paperwork. They do give it all to you and give you instructions on how to fill it out, but it wasn't something that I could just easily email my professors and be like, hey, can you fill this out? Like I had to go in, sit down with them and go through it line by line and make sure that it was filled out correctly. So that is, fun times. So then following that, I did get my orders. They were just emailed me, made sure I sent them over to the credentialing office. And then, like I said, about 30 to 45 days prior to your OTS start date, you will get an email from wings@homecenter.com. And this is all in preparation for OTS. I'll have you make a Wings account where they just want you to update some information, do a medical questionnaire. It'll link you to some cyber awareness training. They're going to ask you to prepare for OTS by reading orientation guides and like 3 different handbooks. And I wrote that they're not super important. They are, but like in the grand scheme of things, if you're trying to study for PANCE and prepare for OTS, like focus on your PANCE. The handbook stuff is not that important. It was nice to have glanced at, but I tried like reading it because I wasn't sure if it was going to be tested on, and then it turns out like I really didn't need to try to memorize it. They will have you complete a pretty lengthy study guide. It's fill in the blank, and use online resources. And then things are always changing with OTS. So for me, they basically was just like, cool, you did it, never looked at it again. However, I heard the class behind me, they actually got quizzed on it. So you definitely have to do it. And then I would glance at it, read it, make sure you're familiar with what's in it in case you are quizzed on it. They're going to give you reporting instructions. Make sure you read those in details, and then you're going to have to buy a lot of things. And so I wanted to touch on that just a little bit more because preparing for OTS was definitely a huge deal. This is the OTS website. They will give you links to it, or you could just type in OTS and this should pop up. And then on the screen, you can see is like the academic overview. They'll talk about kind of how OTS is laid out, the orientation guide, reporting instructions. Like I said, read those, make sure you do everything they say. And then I circled OTS special instructions. These are also known as the OTS spins. This is how you are going to live and talk and breathe while at OTS. Read it before you go, because if you don't, you will be yelled at. And I know a lot of it's probably not going to make sense while you're reading it beforehand, but try to be really familiar with it, memorize it if you can, because you are going to live this while at OTS. This is a packing requirement list that is listed in the orientation guide. And the only reason I brought this up is just because I bought every single thing on this list and I did not need to. So I just wanted to cover a couple things if you're preparing for OTS. Starting on the left here, blue shirt, for example. I went in the summertime. I did not need to buy a long sleeve blue shirt. But if you're going in the winter, you probably do need a long sleeve. So, use your best judgment on that. Undershirts for blues. I didn't know this, but females do not have to wear an undershirt. Males do. So I bought those, and then it turns out I didn't need them. Shirt garters. Probably helpful, but not really required. Definitely need a laptop. Printer says optional. Nobody in my flight had a printer, and that actually became very annoying. I flew to OTS, so I couldn't bring a printer anyway. But if you are driving to OTS and you have a printer, I would say bring it, because it is helpful to have one, and you need it at some point. Backpack. It says is like recommended as your 72-hour bag. I don't really know what they meant by that, honestly, because I use my backpack every day just for having your laptop and your school supplies in it. Hydration pack. You're gonna wear this 24/7, like all the time. It's gonna be your best friend. And I just want to emphasize that it says must have a small document pouch. I would say if you can find a hydration pack that has a couple different pockets, highly recommend, because I carried stuff in my hydration pack all the time. And it just has to be black. It's okay if the logo is not black. It's also okay if the water hose is not black. Mine was blue, and that's pretty common. You need all these things. Flashlight, definitely, you're going to use it every day. Mouth guard, don't need. Don't worry about that. Oops, sorry. Eye protection. So it seemed like they made a big deal out of this. They were like, if you wear contacts, you have to have, actually, so eye protection, that's if when you're using airsoft guns, whatever. I bought some, and then turns out they have them that they can give to you, so you don't need to buy eye protection. But then going to prescription eyeglasses, as I was trying to say, I wear contacts. They were making a big deal of like, you shouldn't wear contacts while being deployed, because you do these little mini deployments where you're like doing obstacle courses, getting sand in your face, things like that. And they're like, you don't want sand in your eye with contacts. And I'm like, you don't want sand in your eyes, period. So anyway, you can wear your contacts. I bought prescription eyeglasses and never wore them. So wear your contacts. Nobody will know. I mean, bring them if you have them, but if you don't, like, don't go out and, buy them. And then pretty much everything on the right you do need, although again, if you're going in the heat of summer, because OTS is in Montgomery, Alabama, it's hot. Very, very, very hot. You're not going to wear a fleece. You don't need a watch cap, which is like a winter hat. You don't need a cold weather jacket. So just use your judgment on some of those things. Rain jacket, I did not have, although towards the end of OTS, there's like hurricanes going on, and it did rain. But there is actually a supply closet at OTS where I kind of borrowed a rain jacket. So, that one's just kind of personal preference. So now I'm going to talk more about OTS itself. I know I already started talking about it, but I'm going to go into a little bit more about what it's actually like. And this, I will say, is a huge topic. I could make a whole video all on its own. So I'm just going to give a very broad sense of it, and then you can use the internet and dig, do a deep dive about OTS. But here's just some pictures of my experience. OTS, again, it's in Montgomery, Alabama. It is 8.5 weeks long. It's divided into 5 modules. Week 1 is going to be the hardest. Week 1 is where they introduce you to the military. So we're talking 4:30 a.m. wake-up calls. You're going to learn how to march, learn how to salute, just etiquette, room inspections, things like that. So it's a lot. It's kind of just, it's a lot to take in. And then as you go through the modules, it gets a little bit easier. In your first couple modules, you're also going to have some academic tests. Don't stress over them. A lot of people will stress over them, but they're really just, if you made it through PA school, you can make it through these. It's just memorizing PowerPoint slides and, regurgitating the info. So not that hard. It is important to know that OTS is the same for everyone. So you're going to have people who are prior enlisted for 12 years. You're going to have chaplains. You're going to have engineers, pilots, medical people. And so it is the same for all of us. And so with that, it's important to remember that this experience will not prepare you to be a PA in the Air Force. There's many times during OTS where I was very frustrated because we're learning like tactical wargaming things, and I'm like, why do I have to do this? And you know, it's just good to remember that OTS prepares you to be an officer in the Air Force, not a PA. And so it's just a game that you have to play. It's just kind of a formality that you have to get through. And overall, OTS is challenging, but if you made it through PA school, you can make it through OTS. It's not as hard as PA school. And so these pictures, these are like the fun kind of deployment physical stuff. A lot of OTS is sitting in a classroom, but there is physical stuff too. So now I'll just kind of finish up with my first duty station and kind of how I moved and things like that. So when I got my orders, OTS was what they call a TDY en route. So basically they were like, you are going to OTS en route to your first duty station. So it had the dates of OTS and it had my report no later than date, which is really important. Be to your base before or on that report no later date. I believe the length of time between OTS and your report no later than date is kind of based on distance. I think either from your home or from OTS or both. And then I had 3 travel days to actually move. So what I did is I flew to OTS, then I flew back home, then I drove. It took 3 days to drive to my first duty station. And on those 3 travel days, you're given a standard amount based off of gas per mileage or mileage, you know what I mean, and then a daily food allowance. And then I believe the number is $166 a day for staying at hotels. Make sure that you keep receipts for all of that. However, when I did get here and in process, they only wanted receipts from like my airfare to get to OTS and my hotel before I before I started OTS. And so the rest is like that standard amount that they give you. And then, so I moved incorrectly, basically, because I didn't know any better. So I'm telling you this so that you do know better. For whatever reason, I attended like a Zoom HPSP session, like I had an email about it, where they talked about moving, and I could have sworn they were like, for HPSP, you don't qualify for moving, like having people help, like movers come take your stuff and move to your base. They were like, you don't qualify for that, your first PCS. And so I was just like, okay, well, I don't have that much stuff to move anyway. And as it turns out, you do qualify. It was in my orders, in like the fine print on the bottom, that I do qualify to have movers if I choose to PCS. And so, which is permanent change of station, by the way. And so there's actually a website called DPS, and it's like Defense Personnel Service or something like that. And you can sign up to have movers do it, or you could do something called a Diddy move, which is a do-it-yourself move, where you have to weigh your vehicle, and then like you weigh your vehicle empty, and then you weigh your vehicle with all your stuff. So you're basically they'll give you money for moving it yourself. But anyway, so just keep that in mind if you are moving, that you can get assistance and not be like me and just throw all your stuff in your car and move like a normal person would. So I'm clearly a little bit salty about that, but whatever. Then when I got to base, I started in processing. Now, in processing is different. It's specific to your base, but basically you get a long checklist of things that they want you to do. And there was a certain amount of them that needed to be done before I took some house hunting time. And so I completed those, and then everybody gets 10 house hunting days, regardless of whether you have a house or not. And this time is just meant to help you settle in, get to know the area that you're living in, you know, move into your house, things like that. Or if you don't have a house, find one or find an apartment, whatever it is that you're doing. And so that is really nice. And then once that's over, you do more in processing, because in processing, like I said, is a very big, long checklist of things to do. And it's everything from like attend a welcome meeting, or go to finance and turn in your receipts, or go to your facility manager and get a photo ID taken and a key to your office, and or go to credentialing and go do some HIPAA training. Like, it's a lot of things and it takes a lot of time. And so I have not actually even begun seeing patients yet. So be patient is my point. And then once I do start seeing patients, there is a 6-month ramp up period where I believe I start with one patient an hour or something like that. And then you slowly work your way up to like 15-minute appointments. And I will be in a family medicine clinic, which is Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4:30. So pretty good hours, pretty nice job. I'm excited to start. But I know a lot of you guys, if you've been following my story, you are excited for me to post a video about what it's actually like being a PA, and I will, but unfortunately I am not there yet. So that is pretty much everything that I have to say for this video. I again just want to thank all of you for watching. I love all the comments, and I'm glad that I am helpful to some of you. So keep on commenting and stay tuned. I will probably post one more video of what it's actually like to practice medicine. So stay tuned and thank you.